Thank you, Mr. Dowd. I beg to move that this House considers the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, Financial Promotion Amendment Number 2 Order 2023. With the leave of the House, as you mentioned, I shall also speak to the Financial Services and Markets Act 2023, Benchmarks and Capital Requirements Amendment and Regulations 2023, and the Financial Services and Markets Act 2023, Consequential Amendments Regulations 2023. Each of these three instruments, in addition to being snappily named, make updates to financial services regulation to ensure that it remains effective. Now, Mr. Chairman, let me first turn to the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000 Financial Promotion Amendment Number 2 Order 2023. Now, this instrument amends the exemptions from the financial promotion regime for both high net worth individuals and self-certified sophisticated investors. Now, the purpose of these exemptions is to help small and medium-sized businesses raise finance from high net worth individuals and sophisticated private investors, otherwise often known as business angels, without the cost of having to comply with the financial promotion regime. Now, this is a long-standing way we've operated in financial services. These exemptions were last substantively updated in 2005, even before I ever dealt with this in the city before I came to this House, so a very long time ago. Economic and social and technological changes since then mean that many more consumers now fall within the eligibility criteria to use these exemptions. In addition, there have been concerns about misuse of the exemptions, including the risk of businesses using these to market investments inappropriately to less sophisticated ordinary retail investors because of the drift over since 2005 of those thresholds. The Treasury Committee therefore recommended that the government re-evaluate these exemptions. And this instrument raises the monetary thresholds to qualify for those exemptions to £170,000 in terms of income and £430,000 in terms of net assets, which takes account of inflation over the past 2 decades. And it also amends other eligibility criteria to reduce the risk of capturing ordinary consumers. This should all ensure a better understanding of the protections that they lose when receiving financial promotions under these exemptions. Further, the instrument amends separate exemptions to the financial promotions gateway, ensuring that these exemptions apply as intended. Now, to sum up, Mr. Chairman, the changes being made by this instrument should reduce the risk of consumer detriment, whilst ensuring that small and medium-sized businesses can continue to raise capital as a result of financial promotions made under these exemptions. I will now move on to the other 2 instruments in this grouping, both of which are made under powers in the Financial Services and Markets Act 2023, which, to save the risk of me garbling it, I will now refer to as FSMA 2023. The Financial Services and Markets Act 2023 Benchmarks and Capital Requirements Amendment Regulations 2023, which I'll now refer to as the Benchmarks and Capital Requirements SI, make 2 targeted changes to financial services retained EU law. Now, FSMA 2023, as you know, Mr. Chairman, repeals retained EU law in financial services, allowing the government to deliver a smarter regulatory framework for the United Kingdom. The repeal of each individual piece of retained EU law will commence once the government and the regulators have made appropriate arrangements to replace it with our own rules, or indeed determine that no regulation is necessary. Whilst this process is underway, FSMA 2023 ensures that retained EU law can be kept up to date and effective. Now, the first change, I said there were 2, the first change made by the instrument reintroduces a discount factor into the UK capital markets, UK capital requirements regulation. Now, the purpose of the discount factor, I can hear you think, Mr. Chairman. What is it? I can tell you. The discount factor reduces the amount of capital small and medium-sized financial services firms are required to hold for certain derivatives activity. And so that people will understand, this sort of derivatives activity might be, for example, a foreign exchange product. The government removed the discount factor in April 2021 through the Financial Services Act 2021. The EU also removed the discount factor from its own version of the Capital Requirements Regulation. Now, after industry raised concerns with the government about the discount factor not being in UK law, the government acted and listened to address the issue through this instrument. Now, this will align UK legislation with the best practice globally and reduce uncertainty for our firms. The instrument also amends Article 51(5) of the Benchmarks Regulation, extending the transitional period for the third country benchmarks regime to the end of 2030. So it's currently 2025, it will be extended to 2030. The UK users currently have continued access to non-UK benchmarks, that's continued since we're in the European Union, without administrators of those benchmarks having to pass through one of the three access routes, the three access routes broadly being summarised as equivalence, mutual recognition or endorsement. Now, there are a variety of issues with the current third country regime. Indeed, the European Union itself has not yet brought its equivalent regime into force in its own jurisdiction. And so if the transitional period were to end with the third country regime in its current form, many administrators may be unable or unwilling to use this regime for continued UK market access. And that is something we're trying to avoid. That would risk reducing the number and variety of important benchmarks available in the UK used by many of our businesses. Losing access to these third country benchmarks could undermine the UK's position as a centre for global foreign exchange and derivatives markets and have further repercussions. So what we're trying to do, as I said, is extend the transitional period from 2025 to 2030. I will now turn to the final SI, the Financial Services and Markets Act 2023 Consequential Amendments Regulations 2023. Now this SI makes a number of consequential amendments arising from FUSMA 2023. When I say consequential, I mean not necessarily of huge import, but consequential in terms of following on from the consequences of FUSMA 2023. These are effectively tidying up provisions. They do a series of relatively small tidying up things. They make consequential changes which are needed as a result of the repeal of a number of pieces of retained EU law. Secondly, it updates a particular cross-reference in FUSMA 2023, an oversight to align the Bank of England's reporting requirements with its remit and responsibilities. And third, it amends something called the Payment Card Interchange Fee Regulations 2015 to apply to certain sections of the Financial Services Banking Reform Act to a new direction-making power which was given to the payment systems regulator. Now, these are consequential changes, as I said, resulting from the passage of FUSMA 2023. To sum up, Mr. Chairman, these SIs deliver important changes to ensure that the financial services regulatory framework continues to function effectively for consumers and businesses alike. I hope the House, and indeed my wonderful shadow, will join me in supporting these regulations, and I commend them to the House and the Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Honourable Lady, the Member for Hampstead and Kilburn, for her questions, and I thank her, first of all, for her support. In essence, what we're doing here is completely separate to what is going on with Basel 3.1, which is due to be implemented in 2025, from July, I think, 2025. So these are separate matters, and I can confirm that these are not intended to be superseded. This is not something that the PRA is going to supersede. And as I say, there's a legitimate debate about Basel, but that is a separate one. I'm very happy, as I always am, to talk to her about these issues in detail. But I want to reassure her and the committee that these are separate to the Basel 3.1 changes. These SIs bring forward important changes to ensure that financial services regulation continue to operate effectively. And I'm glad that the opposition supports them, and I hope that the whole committee will do so as well.